Did you know you can live in Canada for decades and still not receive full OAS payments? Or that one small mistake could cut your payments for life without you even knowing it? Well, I've helped thousands of Canadians decipher how OAS really works, and the reality is most of them had no idea how much money they were missing out on. So in this video, I'll show you the crucial rule most people misunderstand, the one number that really matters when it comes to OAS, and how to get more money every single month for the rest of your life. But let's start with the basics. Old Age Security is a monthly pension program in Canada that provides financial assistance to seniors, typically aged 65 or older. It's meant to help cover basic living costs in retirement, and while a lot of people assume it just shows up automatically, that's not how it works. OAS isn't based on your income or your job history, it's based entirely on how long you've lived in Canada after turning 18. So if you're living in Canada when you apply, then you need to have lived here for at least 10 years. But if you're applying from outside of Canada, you need to have lived in Canada for at least 20 years. But that's only the first piece of things, because once you're approved, you'll get an OAS payment every month, and the amount of that payment gets adjusted 4 times a year to keep up with inflation. But the truth is, most people never earn the full OAS amount, and it's not because they don't qualify, it's because they missed something early on and they didn't realize it. And that's where things get tricky, because OAS isn't automatic. Some people are enrolled without asking, and others aren't. And even if you qualify for OAS, how much you actually get depends on one key number that almost nobody knows about. Because once you do qualify, the amount of OAS you receive doesn't depend on how much money you made during your lifetime, it depends on how many years you lived in Canada between the ages of 18 and 65. And in order to get the full amount, you need to have 40 full years of residency during that window. So even if you're a few years short, then your payments will be reduced for the rest of your life. Fortunately, it's a very straightforward formula. You just take the number of years that you lived in Canada between the ages of 18 and 65, divide that by 40, and that's the percentage of the maximum benefit that you'll receive. So if you lived in Canada for 30 years between the ages of 18 and 65, then you'll receive 75% of the maximum benefit. And if you lived in Canada for 20 years between 18 and 65, then you'll receive 50%. But this is where a lot of people miss out without even realizing it, because even if you spent most of your life in Canada, the years before you turn 18 don't count, and neither do the years after 65. And this means that if you moved here later in life, or you spent time working or living abroad as an adult, then those missing years will quietly reduce your benefit without any warning. And so while you can't go back and add more years once that window is passed, there's still a way to increase your monthly payments moving forward without adding any income or paperwork. You just need to time things correctly. If you wait until after you turn 65 to start receiving OAS, then your monthly payment goes up by 0.6% for every month you delay. This works out to a 7.2% increase per year. And if you wait all the way until age 70, then your payment ends up being 36% higher than it would have been if you started at 65. And once you lock in that higher amount, it stays that way for the rest of your life. Now, this boost happens automatically and it doesn't require any special form or approval. It's just part of the program, and it's designed to reward people who don't need the money immediately and want to maximize their retirement income later on in life. And if you're still working or taking money out of an RRSP when you turn 65, waiting a few extra years can also help you avoid the OAS clawback, which is when the government starts reducing your payment because your income is too high. So delaying helps protect your benefit on both sides. You're not only earning more, but you're also more likely to keep all of it. Then at age 75, there's another bonus, and your OAS payment increases by an additional 10%. And that 10% increase is based on your current monthly payment amount. So if you already delayed and boosted your payout, then that 10% gets added on top of that higher figure, which gives you even more long-term value with zero extra effort. But that only works if you're receiving the full benefit in the first place. And for a lot of people, that never happens because the clawback starts quietly, and by the time you notice it, part of your OAS is already gone. So once your income goes above a certain limit, the government starts pulling back a portion of your OAS every month, and that reduction happens automatically through the OAS clawback. Today, the clawback kicks in when your net income hits around $91,000, and from that point onward, every extra dollar of income above that threshold reduces your OAS by 15 cents. And if your income goes high enough, around $149,000 a year, then you'll lose the OAS benefit completely, even if you met all the other requirements and would otherwise qualify for the full amount. And this isn't based on your tax taxable income or what's left after deductions. It's based on your net income, which includes things like RRSP withdrawals and rental income. This is why the clawback often catches people by surprise, because the reduction happens in the background, and unless you're checking your OAS payments closely, you might not even realize that it's happening until the numbers don't line up. And by that point, a portion of your OAS is already being taken out before it hits your account. And what makes this even more confusing is that the income being used to calculate the clawback usually isn't based on what you're making right now. It's based on what you made last year. This means that if your income recently dropped, your OAS might still be reduced based on old numbers that no longer reflect your current situation. So let's say you retired in 2024, but your income in 2023 was still above the clawback threshold. In that case, your OAS will still be clawed back even though you're no longer earning that amount, and you won't see the correct payment until July when the CRA finally updates your file based on your latest tax return. Now, if you haven't applied yet and you know your income is about to drop, you can avoid the clawback entirely by waiting a few months before you apply, because once your new return is on file, your OAS will be calculated using the lower income and you'll get to keep the full amount from day one. But if you've already applied and you're receiving reduced payments, that's okay, because there is a way to ask the CRA to lift the clawback early using a form called T1213 OAS. In that form, you need to explain your income has dropped and request a reassessment based on your new numbers. And if the CRA approves it, your payments will go back up before July and you won't have to receive the lower amount. But on the other hand, if you know your income will stay above the threshold for a little while longer, it might make sense to delay applying altogether, because that way you can avoid the clawback completely, and when you do finally apply, your benefit will be bigger every month for the rest of your life. Now, most people assume that they'll get a letter when it's time to start OAS, and in some cases, that's true, because the government does auto-enroll some people about 6 months before they turn 65, especially if they've consistently filed taxes and have a clear residency history on file. But the system isn't perfect, and not everyone gets that letter, and this means that there are plenty of cases where people assume everything's taken care of, only to find out later that they were never enrolled, or worse, that OAS started without them knowing, and part of it was clawed back before they ever saw a dime. And that's why the first and most important step is to log into your My Service Canada account and check your OAS status yourself. Don't wait for a notice, don't assume that you're already enrolled, and don't rely on someone else to bring it up. Now, inside that account, you can see if you've automatically been enrolled. If you haven't, start the application process and make changes to how your payments are handled, including how much tax you want withheld from your monthly deposit. Because while the OAS benefit is tax-free when you receive it, it still gets counted in your annual income, which means if you don't withhold anything now, you might owe extra tax later, especially if you have other sources of income stacking on top. And if you already applied and only realized later that your income was too high, or that you would have received more by waiting, there is one more option, but it only works if you act quickly. And that option is that you're allowed to cancel OAS within 6 months of receiving your first payment, but you'll need to repay every dollar you've already received, which is why this only really works if you catch it early, because the longer you wait, the more you'll owe. And once that 6-month window closes, the option to cancel disappears for good. So this isn't something you can delay or undo later, and it's why checking your enrollment and making an active decision before the payments begin is so important. Because once you're locked in, you're stuck with that timing, that payment amount, and any clawbacks that come with it. And in some cases, people don't even realize OAS has started, especially if they were auto-enrolled without knowing, which brings us to one last situation that catches more people than it should, and it's the one you'll want to avoid the most. So if you plan to delay receiving OAS but never submitted an application, you might think you're in the clear. But in some cases, the government enrolls you automatically, especially if your tax history makes it look like you're eligible, and when that happens, the payments can begin without any action on your part. And if your income is already above the clawback threshold, the entire benefit could be taken back before you ever receive it. So even though the money never hits your account, it still gets recorded as income on your tax return, which means you could end up paying tax on money you never actually saw. If that happens, and it's been less than 6 months since the first payment was issued, you can cancel and reset everything as long as you repay what was issued, even if it was clawed back. But if you miss the 6-month mark, the cancellation option disappears, and at that point, all you can do is stop future payments from going out. So if you're still working or earning income above the limit, the best thing to do is log into your My Service Canada account right away and pause your OAS moving forward. So now you know how old age security actually works and why so many people end up with less than they expected. But there's something else that plays a massive role in how much you get to enjoy retirement, and that's the credit card you're using today. Because if you pick the right card, you'll be earning free flights and hotel stays on everything you buy. But with the wrong card, you're passing those up for next to nothing. So to learn which cards offer you the absolute best bang for your buck, so you can have a retirement most people only dream of, watch this video next.